In a world where justice is supposed to be blind, there are those who believe the scales are tipped in favor of the powerful. The ones who are meant to protect us are often the ones who cause the most harm. The police force, sworn to serve and protect, have become a symbol of fear and mistrust for many. And the court system, designed to ensure justice for all, has failed time and time again. But there are those who refuse to be silenced, who fight for change, and who demand accountability. Join our host, former Texas police officer and major crimes detective, Justin Carlson, on a journey through the darkness as he shines a light from his extensive 14 years of experience on police injustice and the failed court system. And as he speaks with the many others who have also experienced injustice. This is Failing Justice.
Welcome to the Failing Justice podcast. I am your host, as always, Justin Carlson, and here I have my co-host with me, Preston Green.
Hey, man.
This is our first podcast of 2024. A lot of exciting things happening here at Failing Justice. I'm going to forgo that for right now, though, because we have guests here, and we can talk about that next time, or I can post in the blog at failingjustice.org. But I want to go ahead and hop in to the show immediately, and I want to welcome my guests. I have several on the screen that you can see next to me, the split screen. I have Mike Lowe. Mike Lowe is with Lowe Law Group, based out of California. I think he's got offices in Arkansas and also Chicago. Welcome to the show, Mike. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Justin. Thanks very much.
He is joining us from his office in California. He couldn't be in studio tonight, but in studio, I do have Cecilia Barajas. Thank you for joining us. And also her husband, Eric. Thanks for joining, Eric.
Appreciate you having us.
Also on audio, she is audio only, but she is the sister of Cecilia, and that is going to be Raquel Ramos. Raquel, if you would say hi.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining the show. There's a lot of us here tonight, but I'm thrilled to have each and every one of you here. I am just really honored to be able to have this conversation tonight, and we are here for a good reason. The reason we are here is to bring awareness. We want to tell you a story. I'm going to let my guests do most of the talking. And I guess really and truly, I'll start off with you, Cecilia. We're here for your brother, Daniel Barajas, who passed away. I want you to talk about that, though. I want you to go ahead and just bring us into that story. And Mike, feel free to interject anytime. Mike is the lawyer for the Barajas family, and he has a lot of knowledge about the case too. So feel free to interject and talk amongst yourselves. But Eric, you too, but you guys are the family. So I want you to tell your story and your brother's story, Daniel, and then we will kind of just go from there.
Okay. I'll start with, we're really grateful to have Mike representing us. We feel like just given everything that's happened, I think even us just getting this far and having his representation, I think we've overcome a lot of hurdles with just that. But Mike, you want me to start with just the day, how it all happened, and you can talk more about where we are with the case?
Sure.
Okay. So actually, coming up Monday will be 2 years ago that Daniel Adrian Barajas, our brother, was 38. He was driving from West Virginia. He had just finished a job there. And between finishing that job, he was a welder, specialty welder, and starting a new job in Wyoming. He figured he would come out to see the family here in Texas. Recently had a 10-month-old. Raquel had a 6-month-old. He was excited to see his newborn niece and nephew. And the family, Grandpa was excited. Our cousins were all excited. We had stuff ready to grill. And he was 5 hours away, and he never made it. He got stopped in Arkansas. And I had a local officer, Officer Dial, came to the house, and he said he didn't know any details. He was empathetic. He said he apologized for our loss, but he didn't know anything about what happened, and that an officer in Arkansas would give me a call. The officer in Arkansas, he just got straight to the point. He said, he asked, your brother said he was on his way to Texas to visit his family. And I took it as a question, and I said, yeah, I mean, he was on his way here. He said, well, we thought he was a drug runner. And I was like, okay, I don't know what you want me to tell you. He's not. And he said, okay, well, we brought the caner out and, searched his car. We didn't find anything, but that doesn't mean he didn't have anything. And he said, what's your brother's history with, involving drugs and drug running or mental illness? And I said, none. I don't know what you want me to tell you. And it just, from there, it was like, I couldn't even rationalize what's going on, what's happening. But even then it was like, why? Okay, you thought he was a drug runner, but how is he dead? And it was from just there. We're coming up on 2 years on Monday, and we know just as much as we pretty much knew then. Ever since Mike really joined the case in September of last year, or the year before now, we've gotten to know more information, but a lot of information is still just unknown or unaccounted for, and we just want to know why he didn't arrive. But not only that, it's like we couldn't even, his body was unidentifiable, and all we know is his last interaction were with 7-8 officers in Arkansas, and we're still trying to put the pieces together. And now we're filed in federal court on what would have been his 40th birthday, 2023. We filed in federal court in New Mexico. The case has since been moved to Arkansas in hopes of getting the truth and hopefully getting justice. And in the long run, what we really want is closure. We still don't. There's a lot of unanswered questions that we have.
So I have, when you asked that officer what happened, what did he say?
He was pissed. He called in hot. I don't even know. To this day, I don't know why he was mad. So he was just heated. And I'm like, he just said that Dan stepped on the line, and it wasn't even making sense. And I'm trying to get the information in that's when trauma hit. And it was like, I can't even understand him because he was just so mad. And so I'm like, I need to it hit me that I need to tell my mom, my brother's dead, her son's not here anymore. And I was just like, I just told him, I understand, I said something like, I want you to know that we're so close, and I'm sure you think we don't know who he was or what he was doing, and I want you to know you're so wrong. And I said, I'll wait. I'll try to get the police reports, and I'll just wait for the police reports. And I was never able to get access to the police reports. We had to hire an attorney just to get the police reports, because I would call and they're like, oh no, you got to talk to this person. I'll call again. You got to wait 48 hours. I'd call again, and I could never get the police reports. So, it was the first attorney that got the police reports, and then it was really Mike. The first attorney was just like, there's no answers. You got all your answers. And he didn't give us any. And so Mike came on board in September, and Mike was really, he was just like, what do you all want? And we were like, we don't even know what do people ask for? Like, we don't even know. And Mike's like, well, I've had clients, that they want a park bench or they want a way to memorialize their loved one. And we told Mike, we just really want the truth. Like, I cannot sleep. I'm like, this is killing me. Like, he'd never arrived and I don't understand why. We just want the truth. And like, to our own surprise, Mike was just like, let's do it. Well, I want you all to get the closure you all want and the answers you all want.
So would you say, or so it seems to me, just hearing this, and I'm a career-long law enforcement professional. I'm going on my 15th year. Preston, he's been a law enforcement officer for a little while, and I've worked major crimes, from homicide, child sexual assault, you name it. Like, and Mike sent me the report. I reviewed the report, and just by the way they read, I immediately, and Preston read them too. I immediately just had, I started writing down, my questions and what I thought was strange, and a couple things. I've delivered death notifications to many families, children. I mean, you name it. Like, and that's never something that you. It's one of the least favorite things of the job. It's not fun, and so I can't fathom somebody being angry when they make that notification. And I don't know what it means, but this is we've talked before, and I don't remember you told me that. Maybe you did, but I don't remember you saying that. And so just hearing that, obviously I want to apologize on behalf of law enforcement for that. But Eric, real quick. So, were you there when she was notified, or were you?
Yes,
you were. As her husband, I mean, how did you? I'm sure you had to intervene. I mean, and console. What was that? What was that like for you as you were hearing it as well?
Yeah, so it was a big blur. At the time, I was taking a nap. She shook me awake and said, "Hey, my brother has passed away. I need to tell my mom." And then she went to inform the mother of
my
Daniel.
mom was there. She was in the house.
And then, the barrage of phone calls that followed, and just there were definitely more questions than answers. And as we learned more, just the stranger it sounded. So it's just a lot came very quickly.
Yeah. So Mike came on in September. You said you had an attorney, I guess, obviously didn't provide you what you wanted. Didn't seem like they were going to go to work for you and get you the answers that you want. And just to be clear, I mean, we talked about this before too. When I first spoke with you, it's not just a far reach ask to want the truth. You have an interaction with law enforcement. These interactions, especially these days, I mean, we're in the modern world, so there should be dash cam, there should be body cam, and you said 6-7 officers, something like that. Every one of them should have had body cams rolling, dash cam rolling, all these things. And was there none of that for during the information that you requested?
Mike, you can speak to that. I mean, all I did was I called the police to the police station. They gave me the case number, and I tried getting the police reports, and I couldn't get them. And also, like, I was so deep in grief. Like, each call I made, it felt like it just took all my strength and energy to try to get it. But I can talk. Mike is the one who filed for the FOIA reports, and Mike, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. First, let me just say that when Cecilia approached me and asked about being on this program called Failing Justice, I said that sounds appropriate because failing justice is exactly what this great family has experienced. They experienced failed justice not just with the interaction with Daniel, their beloved brother and son, on the interstate that day, but they also experienced a failure of justice by the investigators who were charged with getting to the bottom of what transpired. You know, I feel like I've never met Daniel. I feel like I know him though because I've spoken with his family, with Raquel, with Cecilia, with their lovely mother, Elena, and I've looked at these photographs of Daniel. And when you look at photographs of him, you see this beaming, bright, cheerful face. He looks like the kind of guy you would want to be shoulder to shoulder with at a bar. He looks like the kind of guy that you work with who makes you laugh all the time. He looks like the uncle that shows up with surprise gifts for the kids. Just a wonderful guy. Nobody deserves what he experienced. He certainly didn't deserve it. Daniel was a specialty welder. He had what's called the TWIC clearance. And what that means is that he was able to enter onto federal work sites across the country. It's among the very highest type of accreditation you can achieve in that field. And the reason I bring this up is not just to tout Daniel's accomplishments in life, but he had that TWIC card in his car the morning that he was killed. So what happened to Daniel that morning? What happened that morning? Let me give you a quick summary of it. From what we know, from what we can cobble together, from what are completely incompetent and worthless police reports that were generated in the aftermath of this tragedy. Daniel was driving
I don't want to
westbound.
I want to agree with you on that before you continue. When you write a police report, when you are a police officer, detective, whatever the case may be, and you write a police report about such an incident as this, any incident, if we're being honest, but specifically when there is a death of a person, especially when he's on a roadway by themselves, and when you write a report, it is supposed to be like you were writing a report about your life, about your own family. And I have to agree with you. That report was extremely poor written. It was poor written because it lacked detail, all the grammatical errors in it. It was like, and you know,
the accounts were they're mutually exclusive. I don't mean to interrupt you, but in midway through the canine detective's report, she begins mentioning two individuals that are unidentified and
right.
a Jeep Cherokee that Daniel didn't drive. She clearly cut and pasted a prior report involving two individuals by the name of Smithy and Attaway, who were driving a Jeep Cherokee, in the body of a report about Daniel and the drug searching dogs that checked his car. And I might add, that report went up the chain of command and was approved by multiple supervisors and became an official report, with apparently nobody asking, who are these unnamed people in the body of this report that purports to describe the drug searching dog checking out Daniel's car? Was Daniel's car even drug tested? I mean, was it even searched? It raises questions that are just fundamental questions that should not be raised after reading even a halfly competent police report. So yes, it's a joke. It would be a joke that wasn't so unfunny. What the worthless nature of those reports, the self-serving, contradictory, inaccurate, and worthless, absolutely worthless aspect of those reports. So anyway, I didn't mean to jump on you jumping on me, but that's what I say about that.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I mean, when I had Preston read them too, I think there was just so many questions. I couldn't make heads or tails of this incident, and again, career long police officer, writing reports. I've wrote reports for 14, 15 years, and I could not figure out what in the world happened. And then you add that on top of, and I'll let you finish what you were going to do initially. I apologize interrupting. I just wanted to make it known that I agree that those reports were just garbage and a disgrace to report writing in law enforcement. But I will let you continue with the actual events of what we know, so we can make sense to the audience of what we actually know so far versus what we don't know.
And I give this summary of events with the caveat that some of this information is extracted from these reports, which is the only choice that we have, because it's all that we have to work with at the time. So Daniel was traveling westbound on I-30, and he was traveling through Arkansas. And at some point, we believe that he was becoming tired and wanted to maybe pull over and get some shut-eye. And Daniel was the kind of guy who, when he starts to do his drive, he wants to go the whole way through. He's not going to get a hotel and hang out and go have dinner someplace. He just wants to get where he's going. And that was especially the case, I think, because he was so excited to see the two new young members of his family, and to see obviously his sisters and his mother. So Daniel's driving, and I think another thing you got to realize here is that Daniel had a condition called congenital keratoconus, which is an ophthalmological condition, which results in the kind of the coning of the retina and the coning of the eye, and he actually needed specialty contact lenses. He needed to be outfitted with specialty contact lenses because of the condition. On top of this, as a welder, he was frequently looking at bright lights through his welding glasses, and he needed specialty goggles to do his work. Why is this important? Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. First, along with his TWIC certification card, in his SUV, his Nissan Xterra, he had his prescription for his specialty contact lenses, which indicated he had this condition. And he also had his specialty goggles in there, which again is consistent with the professional nature of the work he did and the eye condition that he had. As a result of Daniel's eye condition, he sometimes was very sensitive to bright lights. It would not at all be unusual for him to pull over because of the oncoming traffic lights or the oncoming headlights, combined with being sleepy from driving all day long. So anyway, Daniel pulls over and he sleeps in his SUV. He's catching some Z's for not very long before he's approached by sheriff's deputies with the Saline County Arkansas Sheriff's Office. Now, from this point on, these reports are characterized by these officers trying to paint Daniel as some type of a drug dealer, drug trafficker, or otherwise unstable, hallucinating person. Now, I've been litigating claims in cases, constitutional cases of very, very substantial, very large constitutional cases, big cases, in Arkansas for probably about 15 years now, 12, 15 years. These guys thought and assumed that Daniel, by virtue of his Latino heritage, was a drug dealer. They thought he was a drug trafficker. And they approached him with that mindset. And they approached him with only that mindset. And there was really nothing that they could learn about him, i.e. confirmation bias. There was nothing that they could learn about him that would dissuade them from their preconceived notions of what this guy was all about. And so that's how they approach. Within seconds, really, of their contacting Daniel, one of the cops, Thompson, calls his supervisor and says, "We need to get a drug team down here. We need dogs down here. We need the canines." Right out of the gate. There was absolutely no reason to believe that Daniel was a drug runner, drug trafficker, or drug user. But the very first thing they did was not to call an EMT, was not to have someone come and talk with him if they felt that he was acting unusual. The first thing they did was call a drug sniffing dog because they wanted to bust him for drug. Well, shortly after that, an EMT arrives. You have both the dogs there and the EMT arrive. Daniel, according to them, is acting oddly. And what's funny is the two primary guys who are here, Sulzberger and Thompson, they write reports that are very unusual. They're inconsistent, and one of them omits something that's very, very important here. Sulzberger writes that Daniel turned around while he was talking to Daniel and began to walk into the highway as though he was committing suicide. That's what Sulzberger wrote in his report. That's what he observed, and that's what he wrote. Right next to him is his partner, Thompson. That very important information, if true, somehow is not in Thompson's report. How did Sulzberger see this suicide attempt, quote unquote, Sulzberger, but Thompson did not? That's a big question, because it was that entry in that report that Daniel was suicidal, which is going to go through the end of this case and what's going to be on the death certificate, despite no other evidence of him being suicidal, despite no other evidence of him taking his own life. So cutting to the chase, and we can talk about the details in a bit. After a prolonged detention on the side of the road there, after the drug sniffing dogs come, no hits, there's no drugs in this car, there's no drugs on Daniel, zero drugs. Dog is gone. The EMT show up. Well, even though Sulzberger says that this guy's suicidal, he says this guy's hallucinating, the EMTs, trained professionals, they have a different opinion. They say this guy is acting normal. They say that his pupils are normal, except that his eyes are bloodshot, but he explained that that's from his contact lenses. He is alert, oriented to time, place, and manner, ×5 even. His Perla exam of his eyes is fine. He's a 15 out of 15 on the Glasgow coma scale. There's nothing wrong with this guy, okay? There's nothing wrong with this guy. He's got a full bill of health. So the EMTs say, look, the guy doesn't want treatment. We asked him if he's hallucinating. He says, no, we're going to leave. There's nothing here to see. So they leave, and they leave him in the custody, back in the custody of the Saline County Sheriff's Office. So, clean bill of health, no drugs. They ran his tags, no warrant, no convictions, no even speeding tickets. This guy's clean as a whistle, right? So, he's free to go on his way, right? Passed all the tests, an hour and a half later, free to go, right? Wrong. So despite the EMTs giving him a clean bill of health, Thompson, the not medically trained sheriff's deputy, says, you know what, Daniel, you passed all those tests. There's no drugs here. But you know what? We're not going to let you drive because of your mental state. We're not going to let you drive because of your mental state. What the heck is that? Either you arrest the guy because he committed a crime, you restrain the guy because he's a danger to himself, or you let him go. That's it. There's no middle ground. You don't get to temporarily hang on to him. You don't get to say, oh, go into this area and don't leave this area. It's a do or do not, have or have not proposition, right? So what do we know? What's the last thing we know? We know that Daniel was talking on the cell phone as these officers are reportedly beginning to leave the scene. Now, again, let's keep in mind here, if Sulzberger is to be believed, Daniel is suicidal, and in fact tried to commit suicide right in front of him. Apparently, that's not a concern anymore. So according to these officers, they leave, but Daniel can't drive. He's on his cell phone, and the officers say to him, you know, there is a diner across the highway. If you go across the highway, you can sit there and wait for your friend to come and get you or your family to come and get you. But you can't drive. Not going to let you drive. And then, according to the officers, they leave the scene. 6 minutes later, a very unfortunate man by the name of Regis Crenshaw is driving on his way to work at the Cracker Barrel, early morning shift. He's driving westbound on I-30. And as he drives along that right-hand lane, he looks up into his shock and incredible horror. And what does he see? He sees a man staggering out into the highway with a blanket over his head. And I didn't mention this earlier, but this was a rainy evening, and it was still a rainy and dark morning. And the highways were totally slick. Regis Crenshaw hits the brakes as quickly as he can, but unfortunately, it's not quick enough. It probably could never have been quick enough. And he hits Daniel. And he hits Daniel, and he gets out of the car, and he runs to see if he can help Daniel because Daniel is still alive. And as he turns and looks toward Daniel, he sees Daniel now in the left-hand lane. And Daniel's on his hands and knees, and he looks up, Daniel does, and he sees something oncoming. He registers something coming at him based on what Crenshaw saw. And indeed, there was something coming at Daniel. He was then hit by several trucks there in the highway and killed. What this boils down to is one central question, and that is what happened to Daniel Barajas that morning. What happened to him that morning? How does a person go? How does a man like him go from being within the custody of law enforcement officers who are charged with the duty to protect and serve, especially when at least one of them, thinks that he has some type of a mental health issue going on? How does that man wind up in the custody of these officers 1 minute, and then 6 minutes later, he's perishing on the highway via trucks and semi-tractor trailers? How does that happen? And that's the question that we're going to answer with this litigation. Cecilia said some very kind words about me earlier in the broadcast, and let me tell you that I'm honored to represent this family. I'm honored to be trusted to fight for justice and to fight for the answers that this family deserves. It's a wonderful family. No family deserves this, but most certainly not this one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to sit everyone down. We're going to bring in the court reporters, and we're going to examine them thoroughly, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to ask very pointed questions, and we're going to show them documents and make them explain those documents. And that's what we're going to do here. So thank you for having us. And we can talk more about this case, but the central question is, what happened to Daniel? What happened to him? From the very beginning, there was an effort to portray him as some type of a drug trafficker or some type of a ne'er-do-well who wasn't deserving of his life, who wasn't deserving of the right to travel freely on our highways. In fact, right after the accident, in speaking with Regis Crenshaw, the gentleman who hit Daniel first but did not kill him, these investigators said with absolutely no basis, "Don't worry about it, Mr. Crenshaw. He was a drug dealer anyway. Don't worry about it. This guy wasn't worth it. He wasn't worth your concern," was the message that they were trying to convey. Why? Because they didn't want anyone to feel compelled to do anything for Daniel because they knew that they had done him wrong, right? They don't want to inspire questions. They want to stymie questions. They want to derail questions. And that's what they've been doing to this family from day one. And it's a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mike, first of all, I've got a few questions, but I do respect that you guys have an ongoing case. So I don't, anything that I ask, and, I don't want you to have to reveal anything that would jeopardize the integrity of your case. Cause at the end of the day, that's what matters most. So, if I ask a question, can't answer it at this time, just please let me know. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah. So, Justin sent me this copy of this police report, just going back to that, in the beginning. And I am very, very concerned if this is the expectation of quality of reports that would come out of this this agency. A couple of things is this all the information that you guys are having to go on, or
the file itself consists of more than just those reports. There's a couple of supplemental reports where they were asked if they had any video cameras, and they all submitted video camera footage or body worn camera footage, and they each submitted 2-sentence memoranda that indicates they did not have any video. Other than that, yeah, you're looking at it. The investigation of this matter by the Arkansas State Police was abysmal. There were no photographs taken of Daniel's car at its final place of rest. There was no photographs taken of Daniel's clothing. There was no photographs taken of the contents of Daniel's car. There were scant photographs taken of his body. To this day, we don't know where his cell phone went, where his car keys went, where his wallet went. We don't know the whereabouts of a metal box where he kept $2,000 approximately in traveling money. We don't know where that went. After the incident, within an hour, the whole scene was being power washed by the Turtle Creek Fire Department, obliterating any type of forensic examination of the area. It was more than a substandard investigation. It truly it bleeds into the reasonably bleeds into the realm of conspiracy and protection. There's no valid reason why certain photographs weren't taken. They took a photograph of the back of Regis Crenshaw's car and his license plate, but they didn't take a picture of the front of his car, which is where he hit Daniel. They didn't take a picture of the front of the semis that hit Daniel. They didn't even get the name of the driver of the second semi that hit Daniel. It is, again, it would be laughable if it wasn't so unfunny. Just a joke, really, just a sad joke.
Yeah. So one of the things that first caught my attention on this incident report that I looked at, I don't know, again, I've only been a police officer in the state of Texas, so, practice and procedure might be a little bit different, but I would like to think that the fundamentals across the board should be the same. If they're not, we really, that's a whole nother topic that we need to improve on. But the report itself is just listed as a information motorist assist. I don't know how, you have a death and apparently work a death investigation, but just come out with a information report. That's a little just, it's just different. Second thing I noticed is that, it seems like all these different statements from the officers on scene were just pasted into one incident. Normally in an incident report, if they're using the RMS system, each officer will log their supplements, and that will be generated, and the formatting would just look different than what I'm seeing here, and that's one thing that I would be a little concerned with as far as the documentation goes.
I think one thing of note here to consider is that these officers, if their story is to be believed, and that they really knew nothing of his death, they had nothing to do with it, they didn't cause it directly. It's entirely possible that these officers acted in a malicious fashion and somehow incapacitated or beat Daniel or rendered him somehow disoriented, and he staggered into the highway. That's absolutely conceivable. Let me just say that. But yeah, these officers were forced to write these reports. They wrote these reports after they learned of his death, and I think they had to scramble to figure out what the game plan was going to be among these 7 officers. 7 officers of varying degrees of culpability here, and some are in for a penny, in for a pound. Others are kind of peripheral. And so the question is can we rely on everybody to to keep the company line, to toe the company line here. What about her? Is she going to say something? What did he see? And so that's why I think you see this unevenness and these inconsistency, sometimes mutual inconsistency reports. These reports are hogwash. And I can't stay too long, unfortunately, but I want to bring up one part that as law enforcement officers, I think you guys are really going to flip out over. So when I did the initial FOIA request, I received reports. The reports were generated by 7 officers who were on the scene at one time. 6 officers who were on the scene at one time, 6 of them. And they all drafted reports, very, very poorly written reports, but they all drafted reports. And in each of their reports, they reference each other. So Thompson talks about Sulzberger and Biddle. Biddle talks about Sulzberger and Soule. Soule talks about Thompson, et cetera, et cetera. And we thought we had the complete file. That was a FOIA request from my law firm, my office on letterhead. Right before we filed the case, I had my assistant make a FOIA request, identical FOIA request, but just from a layperson, stationary, a notebook paper. And she got a file that was larger than what I got. And what she got in her file was a CAD or CAD report that you gentlemen are certainly familiar with. Check this out. In this CAD report, it shows that arriving at the scene, along with the first arriving folks, is a guy by the name of Deputy Scoggins, Jake Scoggins. And Jake Scoggins has an entry time that is right in the beginning. And Jake Scoggins has an exit time that is right at the end, meaning that Jake Scoggins was there like the entire time this whole thing went down. He would have seen hallucination evidence. He would have seen suicide attempts. He would have seen this, that, and the other. He would have seen it all. Scoggins never drafted a report. There's no report from Scoggins. And moreover, Scoggins is not mentioned in anyone else's report. He is absent from everyone else's report, even though he was there the entire time. And he did not submit a report himself. You guys know as well as I do, when you go to the scene of a crime or a scene of a death, whatever it is, and let's say you get there and your supervisor says, hey, Carlson, we got enough folks here. We don't need you. Go back to the department. You go back to the department and you draft a report and you say, I went to the scene, period, was told I was no longer needed, period, went back to the department, period. And you submit that report. So there is no excuse whatsoever for Scoggins to have been there for over an hour and not drafted a report. And when you combine that with the fact that he's absent from all the other reports, that raises some red flags that I can't even explain to you. Or, of course, you already know how significant those red flags are. So as far as I'm concerned, until I learn otherwise, I'm inclined to think Scoggins did something, didn't want to write a report to incriminate himself, and his buddies didn't put him in the report so he wouldn't be incriminated. I don't know. What do you think?
Was Scoggins? When did the CAD show that he arrived with the other officers?
He arrived at the same time as Biddle. This whole thing took place basically between 4:35 a.m. and 6 o'clock a.m. Basically, give or take. Scoggins was there from like 4:40 to like 5:50. You know what I mean? He was there. He would have seen everything. And no report.
Yeah, that's especially if everybody else was. Obviously everybody else was required to do it. So I don't know why you would.
If you were relying strictly on the narratives and the accounts of the officers, you would not know that Scoggins was ever there. It's only the dispatch record that gives you that information.
Yeah. That's concerning. And, I look at things from the fact of, I think right now in law enforcement, it's really important that we are transparent and, because ultimately that's what's going to help, build the trust and bring right now we have a huge gap and trust between law enforcement and the community. I think it's getting better, but transparency is key. And here's the thing: at the end of the day, if we did something wrong, we have to be accountable for it, and not try to hide it or cover something up. And when you start leaving parts of a story out, that's when people start questioning things. And that's a lot of times what will get us into more of a bind than if we just told the entire story the first time instead of going into liability mode, right? So, yeah, that's really odd and super concerning. And I would really want to know what his current status is.
Well, it's like the stuff that is there doesn't make sense, but it's also stuff that's not there doesn't make sense. Like, okay, the body cams, no. Dash cam, no. Wait, the radios were out too? Like the radio log? What? Come on.
There's no radio traffic?
No. They said it
Right.
wasn't working that
Mike-
day.
Yeah, Mike requested it, and they said there's no radio logs working that day.
Yeah. Well, then how did they get dispatched?
Well,
Yeah.
that's what the officer told me, was that they got multiple calls of Dan's car being on the side of the highway, but there's no radio logs for it.
And no recordings of 911 calls. There's no radio traffic at all.
No body cam, no.
So
dash
I would be curious to know. You know, I got many questions. How did the officers get dispatched to the scene? Did they communicate over their phones? And then if they did, then I would be, which I'm sure that Mike's handling all of this stuff. But like I said before, you know, I want to respect the integrity of y'all's case. So not being able to say certain things and everything like that. But this has got my wheels just turning up here. So
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I think the main question, I mean, he obviously didn't have his keys. If I saw the pictures of the aftermath, and it was in the piney woods. You ever been in the piney woods, you know, early morning or night? I mean, it's pitch black. It's raining. It's, 1 or 2 degrees away from freezing. This is not something you get out and walk in if you have any other alternative, period. And it's just not what you'd be out in.
I don't know if Mike's coming. We'll just keep going so we can get done. But we had some technical difficulties with Mike, and he had to go. He didn't realize that this was going to be on video, so I think his internet was giving him some trouble because of the video. But we appreciate Mike Lowe coming on and taking his time. And I'm sad I didn't get to say this to him, but what I was going to say to him was, I appreciate his passion for this for y'all, because, like you said, you had a hard time, searching attorneys. And I think that, you can just hear the passion in his voice as he's telling the story. And, I hate he had to go. I hate we had technical difficulties, but I am thankful that he is there for y'all.
Mm-hmm.
It is this whole thing is bizarre. There's some things that he didn't get to say, such as there were no radio logs that were present that you could hear radio traffic. No body cam footage, terribly written reports.
No dash cam.
No dash cam. No toxicology from the ME's office. So many things that you're like, this was the death of a person. But really, and he said it too, you can't conclude one way. You can't conclude that they did it right, and you can't conclude that they did it wrong. But I can tell you what they did do wrong. There's a lot of stuff that they did wrong, but we would never know if they did it right, because I have never I've seen some pretty terrible stuff, but as far as, poorly written reports. But the fact that all this got passed up, that all this got approved, that the state police looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, this is totally fine, guys. You don't need to go back and fix any of this stuff."
The state police looked at it.
That's what he said. Didn't he say did Arkansas State Police get involved in the investigation? Is that right?
So, yeah, I believe it was. So the incident report is the Saline County Sheriff's Office. And then that's the Arkansas State Police that supposedly did the investigation, but they didn't do an investigation of what happened.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I heard him say.
They worked it.
The Arkansas State Police arrived on the scene after he was already hit.
And worked a crash report.
It was basically, they put it as a motor vehicle report or something.
Yeah, person versus
and
pedestrian.
the crash report says no drugs or alcohol were involved. They marked no for drugs and alcohol.
Yeah,
and the fact that a burning question that you have for this is, okay, they thought he was having a medical episode. Medics said he was fine. Then they're saying, okay, well, he may be high on something, but in the report they said he was acting strange, he was acting odd. So these two things combined, but then you say, oh, well, he's okay. We had these concerns. That's what they wrote in the report. They had these concerns, but we're just going to go ahead and leave him on the side of the road and dip out. Good luck to you. You're having, you're hallucinating. You might be high, but we're going to leave you on the side of Interstate 30, and we're going to go ahead and go our way. Oh, by the way, cross the bridge here. You can walk over there. Like, that piece by itself is just mind-boggling to me. I can't put it together. I can't. And as a family, what you guys are looking for, correct me if I'm wrong, just simply what happened to your brother.
Tell me the story.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we want the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, you think, like, even the holidays, you expect people to arrive and you're going to eat and enjoy the holidays, and it's like, not only did he not arrive, like, we couldn't see his body. His body was unrecognizable. We couldn't see his body. We couldn't do a funeral. We couldn't have an open casket. We had to go to Arkansas to pick him up in his urn. And he's 5 hours away. Like, the trauma, like, it's, I can't even tell you, like, on top of our loss and how much we miss him, but just the confusion of just
not knowing.
I mean, our minds are meant to have closure and close it up, like the Titanic. And
you can't complete the stages
like,
of grief.
If you had the Titanic and you didn't know it was an iceberg, we would still try to figure it out, know? And it's like your mind needs to understand and close it up, and so we can move on. And how do you do that when, you have all these questions and it doesn't make sense? He's never had any history of drug anything. And it's like all these hot button topics. There's drugs, there's crazy, and there's this and there's that. And it's his problem was he couldn't see. He literally was blind as a bat. They talk about they came up on him, not with just flashlights. They had to have their spotlights on because they couldn't see anything. And yet they tell him to go walk across a bridge, figure out his way. And it's pitch black and it's raining. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll add is, what is the point of putting suicide in the death certificate? Beyond presumptuous.
Well, they would. So
you let him go in the rain, in the dark, let him walk across the road, but yet you say he killed. I mean, it seems very damning, almost.
Hey, Raquel, can you mute?
Assume.
There you
go. It sounds like, from what I know, from what I've seen, and just from what you guys are telling me right now, it would seem that would be an assumption, because it does not seem like there was an investigation. There might have been there might have been a narcotics investigation done on scene. There might have been a crash investigation for vehicle versus pedestrian. and sometimes with vehicle crashes, even if it wasn't like a vehicle versus pedestrian, even, if it was just a really horrific crash that resulted in somebody losing their life, those investigations, at least here, are still a little different. But in my opinion, if we're going to rule it that it's a suicide, then I would think that you would have an even more in-depth investigation than you would just on a generic a crash that resulted in somebody's death. So from what I've read, and then knowing that that's what they put on the death certificate, it seems like that was an assumption made based on statements that are in the reports provided, tying back to maybe mental health concerns that they had at one point. But then, I'm reading that and going, well, you may have had mental health concerns, but it seems like we went in already with the assumption that this was some type of narcotics or DWI investigation. We, as law enforcement, sometimes I think that we've lost our true mission, right? Like we've lost our sense of service. Not all of us, a lot of times I'll generalize and just say law enforcement because that's what we're talking about. We have a lot of work to do. We should always continue to strive to improve. But I really do believe that we have lost our sense of mission, which is to service. That's what it is. Selfless, honorable, noble service to your community and each other, just as human beings. And we have gotten so much in the routine of being so focused on catching the bad guy.
More adversarial.
Always looking for something. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're always looking for something negative, all you're going to see is something negative, right? If you never look for the good in something, you won't find it. And a lot of this, I'll be honest, is it's I don't want to use the word programmed, but it kind of is programmed. Yeah. It's what we're taught from the beginning. Like when you are in the police academy, being your first introduction to this job, you have instructors that are telling you, always watch your back. Somebody's always going to want to kill you. This is the worst profession in the world, which at times I would definitely agree with that, but we're always looking at the negative, and I just have a different perspective on it. I think if people are doing bad things, it's going to show, and you're going to find it, but you don't have to hunt it all the time. That, and I use that in a general term because, I do think there's times, right? But we're going to go, we should be spending our effort and time on finding and hunting the real evil, right? But not, every time we pull a car over, we're looking to see if somebody's got dope, or, every time we go on, just a routine welfare concern, we're going to be asking questions about whether they're committing crimes or something. It's just, it's the mindset, and that's the loss of soul.
Well, I think Mike said it too. They thought he was on drugs, right? They thought he was a drug trafficker, which there's a distinct difference between being on drugs and trafficking drugs. So if the words come out, drug runner, whatever the word that he used, that being a drug runner, where were the drugs? right? Did they do a search of the vehicle to follow up on what they were claiming? And Mike said it. They thought he was on drugs. This Hispanic guy on an interstate, that was their conclusion. And no matter whatever happened after the fact, the incident that happened, him getting run over, the officer calling you and being angry, they had no heart, they had no passion. And I tell you what, if roles were flipped and something like that had happened to their family member, and that's as law enforcement officers, and we can attest to that, when you go out and you approach these situations, you have to approach them all as if it were your family members. Because I have 2 young boys. If they have interactions with the police, I want them to be dealt with respect, with dignity, until because sometimes people give you a reason to not treat you with dignity and respect. Sometimes that's out the window. But in this case with Daniel, I don't see anywhere where dignity and respect would have gone out the window. It was just a lack of concern, a lack of heart, and a lack of passion. We say it all the time. You can't teach law enforcement officers to have heart and passion. You either have it when you come in or you don't.
Yeah.
And this was a complete and utter failure. And when we have people sitting in this room who have been dealt an injustice, right? Daniel was dealt an injustice, but that is continuing. That injustice continues right now with every tear that falls down your face, because you shouldn't be sitting here wondering what happened to your brother. And correct me if I'm wrong, if your brother committed suicide, and I think you told me this on the phone, then okay. Like if you had evidence that had happened, and you could with no question say, okay, like we see that, even though we don't understand it, okay. But with this, what can you deduce? You can't deduce anything.
You just don't know. Yeah. And I'll tell you where my mind is at right now is, something I'm getting. If they want to conclude that this was suicide, then that would lead me to believe that your brother was going through a mental health crisis. Mm-hmm. In times of crisis, we help, not neglect. In times of crisis, the question should be asked, what can we do for you? Not what are you doing? What have you done? So I believe that it's early hours in the morning, and these officers are on routine patrol, working the interstate. They come across a vehicle on the side of the road with out-of-state plates.
They were dispatched to it, though. They were allegedly dispatched to this.
I mean, that's what they said, but there's no radio logs.
Well, okay. So
yeah, they told Cecilia that they supposedly went there for a welfare check. That's what they told her.
Mm-hmm. They received
so
calls.
there could be two things there. They could have received calls for a welfare concern, or they could have checked out on a welfare concern because they came across. Either way, when they got in the area and on scene, they saw a vehicle with out-of-state plates. Nobody inside that they could see. They got out to check it. They find somebody in the back, which is odd. It's not normal. But there could be a reasoning or explanation to it, right? He's tired. He's going through a mental health crisis. He needs help. But they saw, just the mere fact that they saw a vehicle on the side of the road that looked abandoned, or something wasn't right, and it had out-of-state plates. That is textbook interdiction training right there. They tell you if there's a vehicle and it's out of state, or it's a rental, or yada yada yada, that, you know, it's interdiction. They're up to something. They're committing a crime. And I'm so sick and tired of it right there. That's that street cop training. It's this, and it's become like a cult, and they're out there and they're ruining cops and they're ruining families, and justice is not being served. I apologize for the side tangent, but that's where the mindset is these, we think that these little clues that could be something, it's going to be that every time. And, you know, just at face value, taking something out of context, that would be my original takeaway from the initial contact, why the things happened the way they did, with getting a canine, asking about the drugs, doing the search, all because of little indicators that some officers are told all the time that, hey, this is suspicious, because, you know, it's not normal that people might travel out of state or through different states, right? Every time we see a vehicle out of state coming through, you know, our town or city or county, that it's suspicious. But that is unfortunately what is being taught these days. And so, you know, my initial takeaway is that this was some type of interdiction to begin with. And then they noticed maybe some things that would come across as some mental health concerns. So that's why maybe they called EMTs. And then it got cleared, but there's just so many missing pieces here. And I'm, you know, sincerely sorry that you guys are having to go through this and you just don't have answers, because at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? Tell me the truth, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Just tell me the truth. Mm-hmm. We'll work through it from there. And I think that a lot of it has to do with sometimes we just don't like to take accountability. And even if we got it wrong, even if the officers did nothing wrong on this scene, they just did not tell the story right. And at the end of the day, from where I sit, hey, that's okay too. As long as you say, I got it wrong.
Yeah, the fact that they're, you know, you're trying to get information and
it's not there.
It's not there. They refuse to give it. They have an attitude. You have to get an attorney to get, you know, open records requests like that. That is,
it's absolutely unneeded. It's not the way the law was designed. You know, the open records, the FOIA, you know, that's law for a reason. And it is injustice. And, I just don't think there's any excuse for it.
Yeah, and I think we're lucky to have Mike, because the truth is easy. You know, you don't have to, you know, keep the juggling act and keep all the plates spinning. Keeping a lie going is hard. So I think that, you know, the charade, if that's what it is, will be evident when it goes to court.
Oh, absolutely, because somebody will leave something out. I mean, and we talked about this before when we talk to people who, you know, they get wrongfully convicted, mm-hmm. and you know, obviously, if they're wrongly convicted, then as law enforcement, we made a mistake during the investigation. And what I have come to the conclusion is we spend so much time trying to prove somebody did something. Hey, why don't you just go into it, change your mindset, just and prove they didn't do it? Because guess what? If they did it, there's going to be no hiding it. If somebody did something, then eventually it's gonna come out, because, like you said, like, it's harder to tell a lie than it is the truth. But we're just always looking for that negative. And you know, I do hope that eventually, and I will have faith that you guys will get that closure, no matter what it is, right? If it's or what that truth looks like, but that's what you deserve, and I will have faith that will happen. it may take a little bit, but like you just said, the truth will eventually come out because it's harder to not tell it. So.
Yeah, but from our position, you really realize just the injustice, like if we were a family from Compton, and I was telling Justin this, like think about families who would have to take a loan out just to get the truth, or, who experience this all the time.
Or somebody who didn't have a family. How many of those?
And that's what I told Justin too, like all the people that just go under the radar and, never come out. Because the truth is it would be so much easier to just be silent. And that's the easiest thing to do is you just find your peace. Like, I wish I could believe he committed suicide. Like, I truly want to believe that. And I wanted to believe the coroner. It was like telling, like, even Eric, he was like, what the hell? Are you kidding me? Like, how did they even come with the conclusion? I'm like, I don't know. It's the coroner. Like, who questions a coroner? You don't think coroners lie. And the coroner is a whole other can of worms because we asked for an autopsy. We asked for toxicology. And he insisted one couldn't be performed. Like, I don't know. I don't know the difference between a coroner and medical examiner. And had I known, I would have had Dan's body flown here and reviewed by a medical examiner. But you don't expect a coroner to lie. Their job is to determine how somebody has died. You don't expect them to lie about it.
Yeah.
I don't know how the coroner, if the body was in the shape that it was in, how can a coroner say suicide? How?
I tell you how.
From a police report, that's crap.
Well, but that's the norm has become and we should be able to take people's word for what it is, their word, right? So when an officer writes something in a report, we should be able to look at that report. And quite frankly, I have a difference of opinion on body camera and things like that. There was a time when we didn't have to have them because you could believe somebody's word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we rely on them, and sometimes they don't tell the full story, and they give a certain perspective, and not. Sometimes what matters is this not relating to your situation, but like when you see these use of forces or officer involved shootings. And you just see the body camera. What you don't see is what the officer sees, what he feels, his what he smells, what he hears, how he's taking it. So there's just so much thing that a camera won't capture. So there was a time when we were able to write a report, and that's what it was because it was your word, it was your sworn testimony, and.
We're far from it nowadays.
We are because we have taken it for granted. We have abused it, and something that you just mentioned is why would you wouldn't expect a coroner to lie, right? Well, unfortunately, what we see across this nation today is people are in positions of power and they abuse it. That is not my opinion. Mm-hmm. That is not some conspiracy, or that is not one political party's perspective or another. That is the truth. That is facts. And or else we wouldn't be sitting here talking about failing justice. So you shouldn't expect that. And there's probably so many people out there that wouldn't question it. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, what I believe your family has is courage.
Absolutely.
Courage to stand up and say, hey, I don't think this is right. I could be wrong, but I just don't think this is right. And even though you tell me this is what happened, even though you tell me this is all you have, I just don't feel like that's the truth. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to say it. And people might judge me for it.
Mm-hmm.
I might lose at the end. But what I didn't lose is my integrity in standing up for something that I believed. And that's courage. And that's something that's also missing across the board in so many people today in our society. So I admire that.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing your story and what your family is doing to get the truth, it inspires and motivates me because, if I was in your brother's shoes, I would want my family to do that. And it's just, but it's also just a shame that you even have to do it. And I think that's what we as law enforcement, if these officers did nothing wrong, if this is what happened, then they should take accountability for the fact that they didn't tell the story right. Because the story and the message is what matters the most, because that's what's going to give you closure. At the end of the day, you're the one who lost something and somebody that you love dearly. And that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, and before closing, I want to echo what he said about the courage. I mean, and you're right. How many of these cases just go by the wayside because families don't have money, and they make it hard. The system is designed to just squeeze the juice out of you. We need a lawyer for another hour. We need him for another hour. We need him for an hour. We want 50 grand. We want 60 grand. We want 70. It is designed like to get justice. If we're using that word, to get justice, you got to pay dearly for it. And it's so unfortunate that the system is designed that way, and how many people have been affected. And that's why I do what I do here at Failing Justice. That's why Preston comes on the show. That's to have people like you, and to let you know too that not all law enforcement is like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, clearly it exists, and it exists more than we want it to. And it's a battle for guys like us, because it's like, it tarnishes the badge that we wear. It makes, and I'm sure I'm sure that you probably at one time, if you still don't, because I was the same way. I got out for 2 years. I had a bad taste. I was a cop for over a decade, and I got out for 2 years, and I couldn't stand cops. I was disgusted. I mean, I'm being real here, right? I never wanted to get back in the profession. You ask this guy, he helped me through it. He did, because he was like, dude, you were a good cop. You were doing things for the right reason. Yeah. I got screwed on they try to rip my who I was, that I didn't have integrity, that I was a liar. They try to rip that from me. You had a family member ripped from you. So imagining how I felt about law enforcement and taking that and trying to understand how you guys felt about law enforcement, I can't imagine. Point being, not all law enforcement is this way, and it's sad that it is. It's sad that we even have to deal with this. But as I say with everybody that comes in here, people who've been wrongfully convicted or negatively affected by the justice system in some way, it's not just a headline, right? When you get people in front of you like this and you have these conversations, it's not just a headline in a newspaper or something you scroll on Facebook and see. This is real. This is real stuff. And as he said, I am just so sorry that we're even having to have this conversation. But I applaud you for coming here tonight. We had so many technical difficulties, and I apologize deeply for that as well. But I'm glad that we were able to get this story out, to tell Daniel's story, and this case that you guys have ongoing. I just my hope and my prayer is that the answers do come out, and that you do get the closure that you deserve. Your mom, your sister, brother, everybody gets the closure that they deserve. And
his friends, his family, like even distant family.
So many people affected.
His bosses, we didn't have his cell phone, so we couldn't even get a hold of his bosses, his coworkers. He had written in his hard hats phone numbers from when he was on job sites, and you can't take cell phones in. So he traveled the country for different jobs. So there are people that don't even know that this happened to him and are probably like, damn, where did he go? Like, he just doesn't answer his phone anymore. And you talk about the justice system being green. I mean, I think of how grateful we are and fortunate we are. In such a travesty, it's hard to be positive, but Raquel is a lawyer as well. And I think for Raquel, she couldn't even get involved. She couldn't even interview attorneys. She was just so devastated. Kel, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I would just like to say that I totally agree with you that not all officers are bad, but we know that these police officers, they did do something wrong, because even best case scenario, they abandoned him when he was impaired in some way, either with them hurting him or that they, more criminal, they like actually physically beat him. And we believe they took the key to his car, his wallet. They told him he couldn't drive. And we believe that they took his phone, because if he had his phone, he would have called us. And basically they left him in a more dangerous position than he was before they even did that supposed welfare check. So we know these police officers are wrong. And like Cecilia said, I am an attorney. I'm an immigration attorney, and I work with police officers all the time, and they're some of the best people I know. They're very helpful. But these police officers in particular, they were bad. They did some bad acts that day, and I'm hoping the truth comes out.
Yeah, I'd have to agree that there was some extreme nefarious activity going on, and I just want to thank y'all so much for coming on this show and having the courage to tell this story, and work through all the technical problems that we had tonight. I thank you for the opportunity to get to talk about it, and is there anything else you want to say before we end?
I mean, I really admire you all too. I feel like, man, I can't imagine the position you all are in, because I feel like how close knit the Blue is, and I really admire you all. I've realized like we have like no interaction with police. I can honestly say I've never even gotten a speeding ticket. Like, this is all I know is my interaction with these officers. It's my only interaction I've had. And I like just think of the injustice and the reputation that the Blue badge can have. I feel like we really do need more officers like you all. You just like realize just the, I guess like I truly believe, the thing that Americans hate most are hypocrites.
Right.
And I don't think I honestly, I couldn't really understand before, like, why people hate the police so much. And this has caused me to think of everything. Like, it's changed me as a person. And I really think there's nothing worse than a crooked police officer. Because it is the biggest hypocrite. Like, you think of crooked thief, crooked drug addict, crooked whatever, but a crooked cop is just so dirty. Like, it's just the dirty of the dirty.
That goes against everything that we should stand for.
And it's like the ultimate hypocrite. Yeah. And I feel like that's why, like, officers like these that were in some way involved or saw, I mean, we were talking about 7 officers, like, and no one can come forward and be like, this is messed up. I was there and this is not what happened. Like, it's sickening. Like, it makes you question everything. And it's not even just Arkansas or Texas. It's our country. And it makes me go back to, like, I think of Colin Kaepernick, and I was telling Eric this, like, the hate that people have for the police, like, I can understand, because this is my only interaction I've had with the police.
Yeah.
And that makes me, like, want to hate you all. And you can't, because I know you're not all bad, but that's how the mind works. You're like, cops are bad.
Yeah. And there's definitely plenty of bad cops. And I think from a law enforcement perspective, I think sometimes, within our culture, we get so frustrated. Or this is what I see is we get so frustrated because we want to know why everybody hates us.
Yeah.
Right. And, why can't people just stop, things that, why can't they support us? Or, why do they want to riot or stand up against us sometimes? Or immediately, I'll talk to officers. They'll just have a simple interaction with somebody, and immediately that person is just out the gate and heated, defensive. Why are you doing this? And sometimes officers don't understand that, well, you don't know what they've dealt with before,
mm-hmm.
who they've talked to, what kind of police interaction they've had, or what they see. And unfortunately, there's been plenty of times that we've done it to ourselves. And my opinion is...
Case in point.
My opinion is that there's nobody that can fix it except us. It's our duty. The people don't serve us; we serve them.
Mm-hmm.
Any person serving in an official capacity in public service, that's the very definition of the role. Is we serve you. So I can understand. And I value that perspective. I value how people feel, can feel that way. I just think it's important that we work to fix it. I don't know how.
Well, I think you all keep doing what you're doing, and people see that there are officers who support the blue and honor the blue and are out there, to get truth and justice too. But, I think in any field there are crooked, bad people, but it's especially bad when, people get killed.
Yeah.
Wrongfully and convicted.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and end. Thank you so much again for coming in.
I really appreciate it.
And we're in your corner.
Thank
you. You know that all the way.
It means a lot.
And if there's anything we can do, I mean it. We'll do it. And we support you all. And so thank you for coming on the show. To the listeners, thank you guys for joining in. Real quick though, before we go, is there websites, anything people can do? Like anything people can go visit, anything they should do there anything like that that's set up, like donation accounts, anything? I mean, do you have anything like that going?
Honestly, we don't have a GoFundMe or anything. We feel like we're really fortunate to have the resources that we have to get justice, and we know that there are families that are need resources like that. So we feel like we're in a good place. But we do have media content. We have folks working or have Justice for Daniel Barajas on Facebook and TikTok. They have like video footage and things like that on social media. So it's Justice for Daniel Barajas, and we're looking forward to getting our day in court. Where we were hoping it was gonna take place in New Mexico, but we're ready to stay strong and courageous and get justice in federal court in Arkansas.
Justice for Daniel Barajas, TikTok, Facebook. Make sure you guys go look that up. Raquel, thank you so much for joining in tonight, being part of the show. Bless you, bless your family. Mm-hmm. And I heard them kids in the background. I know it's late, so go take care of them and put them to bed. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for letting me join this way. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Preston.
And to all the listeners, be sure to follow Failing Justice as well, failingjustice.org. You can find us on all social media platforms if you search the @ Failing, the number 1 Justice. Again, the @ Failing, the number 1 Justice. And this is the first show of 2024. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, we're going to be coming at you bi-weekly now instead of weekly. We made that decision to have better content, better shows, give us more time to prepare, and help those that come on the show. So be sure to check us out. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Stay safe.
This is Failing Justice.